easier.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
We're a little bit tired. We're going to give it a second here and see if anybody gets any notifications on.
Carla, do you know where that stand is that Linda had? It's a lot easier to hold it because it has a handle. Do you know where that is?
No.
Okay. All right. Anyway,
Hi there.
we're trying to find something to put this phone on because it's hard to hold with your hand. But anyway. Linda, your arms are not much.
But neither one of our arms are long. But anyway, good evening,
Good
everybody.
evening. I'm Mary.
I'm Linda, and welcome. We really were too tired to get on, but we hate telling y'all something and not doing it. So Mary was about ready to turn.
I had done got my gown on, my house coat, and I was pulling the covers back. I was fixing to go to bed. Linda said, "You told them we was going live." And I said, "Well, I forgot. Now I've already got my clothes and ready to go to bed." So anyway, so I put my clothes on. Linda said, "Well, just go ahead." She said, "Just leave your robe on. You'll be fine." And I said, "I'm not going on air with my."
She looked really cute, y'all.
With my robe on. I'm not going to do
She
it.
looked like Mrs. Santa Claus. Oh goodness. We're just a little bit crazy because we're tired, but all the way down here, driving down 59. It's been a long time since I've driven to Houston. Y'all come to Houston.
Yeah, we've been a couple times in the last few months.
I don't even remember the last time I was here, but it's been several years ago, and it was just so many memories driving down 59 and seeing.
It's allergies, I think.
Probably is.
Sorry.
Do you need some water?
I'll get me a drink.
So we were driving down and looking at the different places where a store used to be, or maybe the store is still there, but it's closed. And Daddy never would cross over the highway. If he was going to stop, it had to be on the side that he was driving on. He would not cross over. Very seldom ever did he do that. And one of our sweet viewers texted us and asked, why didn't we talk about travel when we were kids, which was in the 20th century versus today? So it just got us to thinking, and we were already talking about this coming down here. So I told Mary, I said, we'll just talk a little bit about that. So,
well, I was looking in Linda's
course,
backpack. I'm sorry,
for the stand.
Yeah.
So naturally, there were no seat belts back then, and we would pile in the back of the car.
Yeah.
The kids, I remember I would stand up in the floorboard and act like I was playing the piano on the back of the seat with Mom and Daddy in the front. Sometimes they wasn't too happy about me doing that. Do you remember me doing that?
Yes, I do remember that. It's a lot different now than it used to be. Well, now you have to have seat belts. And, I mean, it's because there's so much traffic, you know, so much more traffic.
People could ride in the back of pickup trucks and did all the time. It was nothing to see in East Texas to see a whole bunch of people in the back of a pickup truck riding down the road. Of course, like Mary said, it wasn't near as much traffic back then.
Well, I'll tell you what, whenever Chuck was little, he was in the Pee Wee League or, you know, the ball things. I'd take those kids from game to game to towns, and you know where they rode? In the back of the truck.
And they were little kids?
In the back of the pickup. Well, I had a whole bunch of them. And that's what I had was a pickup, and they rode in the back of the pickup. They sure did. But we did live out in the country. We lived out in Broadus. We lived in Broadus. And so it was kind of back, it wasn't going through towns. Well, it was small towns, but it wasn't nothing like cities. So...
And there's used to, when we were kids and when Daddy was in the VA, and we would travel back and forth from Nacogdoches to Houston. And Houston is a beautiful city. There's so many things to do here. Of course, we're not right in Houston. We're at the airport's north of Houston. But I've never liked Houston because I've always associated with Daddy being in the VA hospital. Yeah. It's just when I think of Houston, I think about all those trips that we took, and some of it, I'll hold it a few minutes, Mary. And y'all heard Mary tell one time about that time that those people were in the road.
Oh, yeah.
Years ago, of course, it was 2-lane. 59 was 2-lane, and was it daylight when this happened, Mary? When those
Coming down Clinton, no, that was early in the morning. It was
real
dark.
early in the morning, and
It was dark.
it was trees. There's trees all alongside the highway. This was at a time when there were no. It wasn't interstate. It was just a 2-lane road, and it was kind of spooky. You know,
Yeah.
you're driving down the road, and y'all think my eyes are getting big. It was spooky because you
It's just
would
trees
have
on both sides of the road.
35, 40 miles
Yeah.
between towns before there was even a service station.
Yeah.
And it wasn't open all night. You know, it was
Yeah.
open after daylight
Yeah,
hours.
yeah.
So this was a long time ago. This was in the late 50s,
Yeah.
mid 50s, late 50s,
Yeah.
early 60s. So Mama was driving, and she hadn't even had her license long, had she, Mary?
No,
She
hadn't.
did drive it a long
She-
time, but she drove a long time before she ever got her license. And I was in the back seat when you was in the front seat.
I was in the front seat. Yeah, you probably was in the back seat because it was just Mother and I up front.
And you,
I'll take it from
yeah, take it from here.
I'm taking turns over this phone. Linda's in the shower. We should have waited until she got out of the shower.
We told her to keep it down while she was singing. Okay, so tell about the man that was in the
Oh,
in the
well,
road.
I seen them. And I told Mother, I said, Mother, be careful. There's somebody in the middle of the road. And, I mean, that was just a few minutes before we got to where they're at.
Literally were. We
Mama did not slow down a bit. I thought she was going to run over them. But she got in the other lane. It wasn't nobody coming in the other lane. But she went and they screamed. They were so close, you could hear them
You could
scream
hear
at
'em.
us.
And
when
they
they
were
was
trying to
passing.
stop us, and
They
they
was
wasn't
not.
up to no good neither.
Yeah, yeah. it's
And
three
she
men.
stopped at the next town, which was Cleveland.
Cleveland, you're right.
And it was just things like that you know, there was no such a thing as a phone. We didn't have CB radios or anything like we had in the 70s. So it was just a mama and two girls on a dark road in the middle of the morning before daylight, and it was scary. It was very scary.
Yeah, it was.
And all the times that we would come down here, and when Daddy was in the hospital, and then Mary and her family lived in South Texas for a long time, and I would come down here sometimes then. But
going through Houston, I'd rather go through Houston than I had Dallas any day because I lived in Angleton for several years.
Dallas, I'll go through Dallas any day than Houston, and it's always been like that.
Yeah, with
you knew Houston, I knew Dallas.
Well, see, when I worked at the car dealership, I was a title clerk. I came to Houston a lot, picking up contracts and just different things. So I knew Houston pretty well. Plus, I sold. Did I sell home material in Houston? I did sell home material in Houston.
What I was thinking about is when you drove the. Was it a food? It wasn't a food truck. What was it?
It was a food truck too.
Okay.
This was when Bobby's appendix, my husband's, his appendix bursted.
And
we lived here in Houston.
For a long time.
And he could not pick up nothing for 3 months. Well, somebody had to make a living. And I had never, at that time, I hadn't worked since we'd been married. And my husband did not want me going to work. But I had to. And so I called around and I got a job.
Y'all
really
know why I'm
not
laughing,
funny.
but she's going to tell you in a minute what I'm laughing about.
I got a job on the food truck. And I thought, well, this would be fine for me because I like selling and I don't mind driving and all that. Oh my goodness. That was not my cup of tea. It wasn't the work, it wasn't the driving. But you had to go really early and load the truck up with the merchandise, and I loaded that up, and then we would go to these plants in around. I had sold pies. I had sold a lot of things for the church in Mississippi in these plants. I didn't think nothing about it because the men was always respectful. But I want you to know one thing: this truck that I was driving was going to some of these plants, and the men wasn't quite so respectful. Well, and it was not my cup of tea.
Well, I wasn't laughing about that. I didn't know she was going to say that.
I know.
She had to be at these plants when they got they only had a few minutes for break, and that's when you sold the majority of your was. So she would have to go to point A to point B to point C to hit all these places in just a matter of a few minutes. And if anybody's ever driven in Houston, some of y'all that live down here know what we're talking about. That's not an easy task. And
I didn't last
am
long.
Am I okay to tell this?
I don't care.
Do you know what I'm going to tell?
Are you going to tell about Bobby? About
No,
that
I'm
not
telling
paying
about
me?
the tickets.
Oh, goodness.
Y'all,
let me tell you something. What we're digging into now was some hard times for my family.
I got it, Mary.
And because my husband was a bricklayer and he was used to making pretty good, decent money. And when his appendix bursted on him, it just, it was devastating, you know. So anyway, yeah, I did get stopped for tickets because I had to hurry. I had to hurry from one stop to the other, and I was trying to do my job. So anyway,
And I noticed that somebody on here said something about us having a lot of jobs. Back in the old day when we were kids, people moved a lot, and they moved because they went to where work was. And if you think about migrant workers today in the Pacific Northwest, in Florida, in California, where they go and pick crops, back in our day in Texas, people from East Texas would go to West Texas. Now, we always had a home in East Texas. We had a home that we lived in, that our daddy built. We lived in all of our life, but Daddy would go there in the fall, and he would work until right before Christmas. And he took a carload, or not a carload, a truckload of people that wanted to work to make money, because they knew they could make money in the gins and in the cotton fields. So people did go where there was work. And so when we grew up, we were raised to work. You know, you make a living, and as long as you're making an honest living, and those of you who've read our book have seen Mama put this, y'all have read her words. Our daddy believed that any honest work was honorable, and we grew up with that in mind. So we know from the time that we were big enough to know what a quarter was, that you need to work to make a living. So that's what we've always done. And if it, whatever the job was, as long as it was honest, well, we done the job.
Right. Well, the thing about it, the reason my husband and I, we moved, actually, when you think about it, we really didn't move that much.
No, not like they did back in the earlier days.
But my husband was a union bricklayer, and he followed the big jobs, and that wherever those big jobs took him, that's where we went. And so that's one reason we actually we really didn't move that much.
No, y'all
We
really
really
were.
didn't.
After y'all left Mississippi and moved to Texas, y'all were mostly in South Texas.
In South Texas,
most of the time you were.
Yeah.
But Bobby and y'all, somebody may have heard us say this before. He was a very talented brick. He was almost like a master mason.
Yeah. He was a, you know how something you just when you're cut out to be that. His grandfather was also a bricklayer, and it was just kind of born in, you might say. My husband, when he got out of the Marines, he came to Mississippi. He went to it was called
like a school or something.
Yeah,
apprenticeship.
He went to a apprenticeship school to be a brick mason. And whenever he graduated from it, they said that Bobby was just a natural. It was just something that he was. It was just he knew what he was doing. And matter of fact, it wasn't that many people out of that class that graduated. But my husband, he designed and built the a fountain in Jackson, Mississippi.
In the Mississippi
At the
Research
university.
Center, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in a magazine. It was a highly publicized magazine that this piece of work that he designed and built was in.
He was a very much craftsman, and he took pride in his work.
He did. He
did not like somebody that just slapped that brickwork up there. He did not appreciate it.
And back to our childhood, we were also talking about 59 and 96 runs parallel. They both run north and south. So 96 goes from, I don't know where it starts, way up there, I guess, and goes through Tenaha and Center and St. Augustine and on down through Buna and um, it goes all the way to Beaumont and goes past all those places. So when we would go, when Daddy would go in the summertime to sell watermelons, we went down 96, and there were stores there, and there was certain places that he stopped all the time. There was one store that was on the other side of the highway, on the north side, and this was when I was probably maybe 4 years old, maybe 5, I don't know, pretty little. And I would ride in Daddy's lap while he drove this truck, and all the rest of us was in the cab of the truck. You know,
sleeping in the floorboard,
wherever you could find a place to lay your head. And I had a vaccination, and I had a scab on my arm, and I cried and cried. I want a Band-Aid, Daddy. I want a Band-Aid. And he didn't stop. He would not pull, but he stopped at that store and bought some Band-Aids to go on my scar so it would quit hurting. At least I thought that's what made it quit hurting anyway. But we stayed, one summer, we stayed in a hotel room, and it wasn't a hotel, it was a motel. It was a mom and pop motel. And we were talking about that today. All 6 of us, of course, Daddy was out selling watermelons, but we lived in that motel room for several weeks during the summertime, and hot and humid. And I doubt seriously if there was an air conditioner anywhere, because back then they didn't have that.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead.
I was thinking, I was telling Linda today, I was thinking about one of the times that we stayed in one of those motels or whatever. I don't know if they didn't have a bathroom. We were staying somewhere or other. Or anyway, we took a bath in a number 3 wash tub. We took a bath outside in a number 3 wash tub, and it had a those number 3 wash tubs was made out of galvanized construction or whatever material, and it had a cut in it, and it cut my back in.
Wasn't funny either.
No, it was not funny. I remember that so well because we were 2 of us would get in that tub at a time. We were just little kids.
You know what, Mary? We rented a house. It was on the intersection down there somewhere. Charles knows where it was at. It was around Beaumont or Orange. Do you reckon that's where we had that tub at?
Maybe so. I just remember 2 of us being in that tub, and it cut me because it was a tight squeeze for 2 people. We was
Mama was trying. She was multitasking before that was worth.
And we was little, but we was both getting in that tub.
Works fast.
Oh, Lord.
But at this same house, here, let me hold it a minute, Mary. At this same house, we had, Paul Lee was staying there with us. It was a big house, and he was staying there with us. Him and Daddy worked a lot together in the summer, selling watermelons, raising watermelons and selling them. And so we had a thief that stole watermelons off the truck at night. So my daddy was a very smart man. So he just decided he was fixing to put a stop to that. So they run some hot wire to, not enough to kill anybody, but just enough to shock the senses. And seriously, my daddy, he was not a mean man, but he was tired of people stealing his watermelons. You know, that's what he was making a living with. And they run them wires. And but when they come in there to get them watermelons, they got the poop chopped out of them. So they didn't do that no more. Well, this was the same house that we was living in when in the yard I found an old nickel. I still have an old Indian hand nickel, and I still have that nickel.
Is that right?
Yeah, I'll have to get it out and show it to y'all sometime. Anyway, we have a lot of memories of South Texas. A lot of them are not good. Mosquitoes and hot as smut, and just I can imagine how poor Mama dealt with all of us whiny kids, because trying to please little bitty kids when you're in a place that's not home, and that you're just making do. But Daddy was working and he was making a living, and that's what we did.
I have some good memories of South Texas and Angleton whenever that was after my kids. Well, Linda was I think she was 3 when we moved down to Angleton one time. But I still have friends that lives in Angleton today that I just consider family because they just
Y'all lived there.
we
You
lived
raised your
there
kids
twice.
down there
Yeah,
for a
we
long
did.
time.
We sure did. And so anyway, I have some good memories of Angleton and the people in the church.
So as far as traveling from the 20th century till now, you know, we're going to hop on an airplane tomorrow, and if all goes well, which prayerfully it will, we'll be in Puerto Rico in less than 5 hours, which is over 2,000 miles. So times have definitely changed.
Yes, they have.
Used to driving from Nacogdoches, where we lived in town, to Sharina, to the farm, or south of Sharina. It was probably no more than 35 miles.
Yeah.
It
It
probably
seemed like
took
it'd be
us an hour and a half to get
Yeah.
there, you know, because
Yeah.
Mama drove 50. She probably
Mhm.
thought that was too fast.
Yeah, it seemed like it was an all day. Well, when we would go in the morning
And
we'd
stay
come,
all day.
yeah, stay all day.
We'd come back late
Yeah.
that evening.
Yeah.
If we didn't spend the night, but most of the time we didn't because
Yeah.
we went to church the next morning. So we'd come back home that evening or
Yeah.
afternoon late. But, and then we were also talking about Daddy always, he didn't call it bartering. He always called it trading, and he had his regular stops that he stopped at. And I remember this one store, Edward and I have talked about it many times, somewhere around Port Arthur, Orange, and I don't know exactly where the store was, but it's a little individually owned store. And he'd pull up with his truck, load of watermelons, and he'd walk in the store, and the owner would say, "What you got today, Mr. Cecil?" Everybody called him Mr. Cecil.
Yeah.
And "What you got today, Mr. Cecil?" And my Daddy would tell him, you know, he had black diamonds or whatever he had, striped or whatever he had, and he'd come out there and tell him how many watermelons he wanted. Daddy would unload the watermelons, stack them up, and he would fill up with gas,
Yeah.
go back in the store, and buy lunch for us. He'd get hot link sausage, light bread, soda water, cheese. And if y'all don't know what soda water is, some people call them soda pops or Cokes or whatever. We call them soda water. That's what we grew up calling them.
That's what we did.
And that's what we had for lunch. And there was not a dollar change. It
Yeah.
was all done through, I have what you want, you have what I want,
Right.
and we'll trade. And
Yeah.
that's what Daddy did. He traded. And that wasn't the only store he did that. That's just one that I
Yeah.
specifically
Yeah.
remember. So we love visiting with y'all, and I told my sister I'd try not to be on too long, so I want to keep my promise because she is very tired. And
I couldn't sleep last night. Last time I looked at the clock, it was like 2. It's after 2. I just couldn't. I guess just anxiety or whatever.
just before a trip,
Yeah.
I was always like that when I traveled. When I was leaving the next day, especially if I was flying. Are you gonna go online on your Pampered Chef?
I'm not
No,
going online on
tonight.
Pepper Chef
Okay.
tonight. Mm-mm.
Okay.
I'll sometime or another. I don't know when.
In the next few days.
Next day
Okay.
or 2, I'll go live.
I'm going to go live just briefly on my Pampered Chef page if anybody follows me on there. But thank you all for your well wishes, and we're going to try to enjoy our trip. We're going to try to relax a little bit. Hopefully we don't get chased by the iguanas. And if we do, I can tell you one girl, it ain't gonna be going outside. I'm gonna hold up in the hotel room until it's time to leave because I don't like creepy crawly things any more than Mary does. But I saw that video of that one, and these things are like 8 or 9
I didn't see
feet
the
long.
video. I didn't see it.
And that thing was moving. They said they sneak up on you.
Woo!
I said,
Man,
well,
I
that's
hope
all
I have a
I.
heart attack.
That's
while
all
I'm
I
gone.
needed to hear. I want to make sure my heels are covered and
Yeah.
don't sneak up on me. Anyway, we love y'all, and thank you so much for letting us share our lives with you. And we will be back on live every chance we get while we're in Puerto Rico. So thank you very much. God bless. Count your blessings, and
Good night.
we'll see y'all again soon.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye bye.